Are we about to see Arsenal absolutely bottle the league? Hi, I'm Wayne and welcome to Goals by the Numbers. Let's just get straight into it. So, today, the match to discuss, Manchester City welcoming their visitors, Newcastle. Why is this match important? Well, if Manchester City win, they close the gap on Arsenal. And if Newcastle win, it helps to get their stop-start season back on track. So, following on from Arsenal's result against Wolves in the midweek, Manchester City had the chance to close the gap and actually really start to apply pressure. Having won their last two matches against Liverpool and Fulham, Manchester City were hoping to make it through in the bounce. Yeah, of course, more wins, never a bad thing. Manchester City only made one change to their starting lineup from the match against Fulham, and that was Marmoush coming in to replace Phil Foden. Whilst Newcastle were missing their top scorer, that being Bruno Guimaraes. In a match where Manchester City won 2-1, all three goals came within a 13-minute spell. On a counter-attack, Marmoush got the ball and he passed it into the path of O'Reilly, and with a first-time shot, he found the back of the net. In fact, it was really good technique. As Marmoush laid the ball off, he kind of waited for the ball to get right into the right spot for his momentum to strike it, and then first time, back of the net. Really good goal. Newcastle equalised when Manchester City, whilst trying to clear a corner, Aït-Nouri charged down the ball, and Lewis Hall's shot deflected off his back and bounced into the net. And at first, when I saw this goal, I actually thought that Donnarumma just didn't really move to save the shot. But when you watch it back, you notice that he's got all his weight on his right foot because he sees Lewis Hall's shot going into that corner, but a deflection just completely wrong foots him, and then he's left a bit flat-footed. So, the winning goal, the goal that took Manchester City to victory. The goal was again scored by O'Reilly, but when the play started, Semenyo played the ball through the Newcastle back line and Haaland ran on to cross the ball. Now, the ball went in just inside the left back, which is why Haaland was, I guess, in the right position to run onto the ball. Now, what I found interesting is when you watch the eventual scorer, O'Reilly, he is outside of the box, but he's busting a gut to get in the box. And Kieran Trippier, who ends up being the player to contest the ball with him, is already there. Now, if you look at this image, you can see where Haaland is circled, and the two lines illustrating the runs of O'Reilly and Trippier. In the second image, the ball is in the air waiting to be attacked. Trippier can see the ball and is still goal side of the defender, which is where he's supposed to do. And then, well, O'Reilly just went for it and Trippier seemed to get caught underneath the ball. This image just seems to sum up Newcastle's season. Promise, and then you just have someone kind of jump on top of you. So, the match ended 2-1. Manchester City will be happy. And guess what? That means they close the gap, leaving it to just 2 points on the same amount of matches. So with Arsenal in mind, since the turn of the year where Arsenal won their first match, they've only gone on to win 2-7. And this was before today's match against Spurs, the recording. So, 2 wins in 7 is not exactly title-winning form, but it got me wondering, are Arsenal just feeling the pressure, or is this more of a systemic mental issue? So, post the draw against Wolves, where they didn't really go for the kill and really try and finish Wolves off, Wolves being bottom of the league, and to be honest with you, one of the worst teams I've seen in a long time. Arsenal almost just defended for the last 20 minutes. Now I get it, yes. Manchester United drew with Wolves, and Wolves in the last, 10 games have had an uptick in their results. But Arsenal do kind of pride themselves on having a really good defence. So you would assume that if they get 2 goals up, it's going to be really hard to get back at them and actually get a result. But that's exactly what Wolves did. And if we're honest, Wolves didn't actually just defend with, you know, 10 men behind the ball. They actually had a bit of a go and will be really pleased to have got a point they probably didn't think they'd get at the beginning of the season. But when we think of the last few seasons, what do we see? Well, Opta, or rather Opta Analyst, released some interesting stats. And I've linked the full article in the description. So Opta point to the defence being unlucky and the attack underperforming in the last 7 games or matches. But the attack is a bit of a strange one. You have Gyökeres on 8 goals, followed by Zubimendi, Trossard, and Saka, who have 5. Decent numbers, not bad. Now, this isn't terrible, and Arsenal have scored only 4 goals less than Manchester City. So clearly they are, as a team, scoring enough goals. But sometimes when you watch them, it feels a bit, dare I say, disjointed. Of course, I can be a bit of rival, I can make jokes about them only scoring from corners. But when I have watched them, something just doesn't look right. Not actually wrong, but something just doesn't actually, at least to my eye, seem right. And as the amount of goals between Manchester City and Arsenal proves, there isn't actually something wrong factually. But when I think about it and kind of extrapolate and look at more data, if we take Saka, for example, very good player. In the 22-23 season and 23-24 season, he managed to get a goal and assist per 90 over 0.70. This season, he's only hitting 0.44. So is this down to how the team is structured? Is this down to the opposition just sitting really deep and defending or doubling up on him? Again, something seems a bit disjointed about the team and its approach, if I'm honest. And yes, I understand it is actually quite hard to criticise the team currently top of the league, but I guess this is my best attempt at it. Opta Analyst then went on to mention that since the first 20 matches of the season, some key stats from Arsenal have actually become worse. So they've been shooting less, they've scored less and conceded more, which is not unreasonable. Teams go through highs and lows in form, but now is the wrong time to be having a lower form when you're effectively in the run-in towards the end of the season. With a 2-point gap, the next stat does actually paint a bit of a bleak picture. So Arsenal are 2 points ahead and do need to go to the Etihad to play Manchester City and effectively not lose. So assuming then that Manchester City win all of their matches, they'll secure the title. But in the last 4 seasons, with 12 matches remaining, and this is a stat that came out after the Arsenal draw against Wolves, Arsenal have only been close to matching the amount of points that Manchester City have got in the last 12 matches once in the last 4 seasons. That's when Arsenal got 31 and Manchester City got 32. Otherwise, you're talking high teens, very low 20s. This, at least to my mind, looks like choking under pressure. Or at least when what we used to call as Man United fans, squeaky bum time. Something that we can even point back to even in the times under Wenger. I mean, there was a season where Arsenal actually top of the league, and this was the season when Manchester United played Chelsea in the Champions League final. Arsenal were actually top of the league going into the kind of final furlong, final stretch, and it's had a really terrible run of form and ended up dropping. I assume some players were injured, but that can happen. But even back in those days, this was something that was happening, and it always seemed to happen in and around February. Something just seemed to go wrong. I don't know if it was running out of steam, but there was a collapse. Which makes the Spursy tag a bit interesting because Spurs have the tag and Arsenal don't really. I guess they're now being known as chokers. So, what do we want to see from Arsenal effectively? Not winning the title this season and the choking tag, I think, might stick. I think what's worse with the potential choking tag is if behind the scenes they are genuinely choking, being known as the chokers will only get worse because other teams will have belief that if we just stay within 4 or 5 points of them towards the end of the season, they are going to crack. And that might have a bit of an upshoot of confidence in whichever team Arsenal are competing with for the title, because they'll believe if we just go in this game and we just win and we just keep winning and we just keep winning, Arsenal are going to fall off at some point. And every time the other team wins, everyone will look at Arsenal waiting for this choking moment, which I think will make some teams think if we just defend deep and just try and hold out long enough, they're going to feel the pressure. And when that pressure starts to weigh heavy on them, we can then attack, land a bit of a counter, and maybe get a goal. And then that pressure ramps up. And then, of course, in the day and age social media, the memes will be absolutely rampant. But if Arsenal actually do manage to hold their nerve and actually win this season, then the choking tag, I think it might get relegated to the annals of history, which sounds really grandiose, considering how wide-ranging history is and the kind of things that have happened. So, what do we think? Do we think Manchester City are going to just keep cranking up the pressure and Arsenal are eventually going to crack and crack badly? We also know that the biggest point swing to win a title was 13 points. And that goes as far, and that actually covers all of the teams in the top four, I believe. Could you imagine a scenario where Arsenal came fourth? That would be crazy. Okay, so I'm Wayne. Comments down below. Am I talking absolute nonsense? Do we think Arsenal might crack? By the way, I've actually seen Reddit posts in the r/Liverpool thread where they're talking about how Arsenal cracked a couple of years ago when they won the title, or at least last season when they won the title. So this isn't something just, well, maybe it is something I've made up, or maybe I'm suffering from immense cognitive dissonance. Or maybe Arsenal perennial chokers. Let's find out. I'll catch you in the next one.